Why was I smiling during this entire interview? Why did I feel just filled with joy for 45 minutes of this discussion? Well, if you listen to the following podcast with Brandon Steiner, my guest today, you'll know exactly why. He created an industry, the way he did it and how he did it, and just the core of his being is so awesome. It's so inspirational. I didn't want this interview to end. I thoroughly enjoyed reading his book, which we talk about. He's got several, but just his raw being of who he is and the positive person he is, and the get stuff done no matter what it takes, was just incredibly inspirational. So enjoy this. I know you're going to glean a lot of value from this as well. Enjoy. Brandon is the CEO of Collectible Exchange, the country's leading sports collectible and exchange marketplace. He has lived with purpose since he was a very young boy, literally hustling for food money on the streets of Brooklyn. His story is unreal. He's the author of 2 previous books and another one that's forthcoming, and the creator of the popular What Else blog. And he also hosts both a podcast and a live Q&A television show broadcast on Facebook Live called Project X. The show features in-depth interviews with prominent business people, entrepreneurs, authors, and athletes that focus on their journeys to success. He has delivered keynote addresses, a TEDx talk, corporate training, and motivational speeches to sports teams all over. And I got to tell you, I just finished his book this past weekend, and one of his books, and it was an amazing read, and his story is outstanding, and you are going to absolutely love this gentleman. So without further ado, Brandon, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. And I hope that we come up with some conversation that can be helpful. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. People are busy. Hopefully, you take a step back, take a breath, and let's see where this goes. Usually, I'd like to think I'm a help. So hopefully you're going to invest about 30, 40 minutes into something that maybe is going to maybe be that small change in your life that you needed.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to do every episode with you because I'm telling you, just the brief time we've talked, I love your spirit. So you literally became this titan in the sports collectible marketplace. But I learned reading your book, you have extensive experience in like the restaurant and the hospitality industry. You were putting on these pay-per-view events back before pay-per-view was available on streaming or cable. Actually, one of your big fights, Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard, I remember seeing that on a closed pay-per-view thing back in the late 80s. But can you just give the listeners a little bit of your background? Because when I introduced you saying that you had literally been at the game since you were 12 years old, you have. And some of that was through necessity. And you just have always worked for it. Can you just speak to kind of growing up in Brooklyn and what that was like for you?
Well, I mean, what's crazy is, we've been going to games since we're 9 and 10, and we would go actually without an adult, which is really amazing. And that's when the Bronx was, you assume you were going to get mugged or robbed, and that's kind of part of the whole experience. It's this question of what they took, whether they took your watch, or they just took your money, or just beat you up a little bit. It wasn't even like a question. And we were a good group of us, but, we were not 9, 10 years old, and we were going to 20, 25 games a year. We never missed a bad day or a doubleheader. But, I grew up on 539 Kings Highway in Brooklyn, relatively poor. Lived over at Black Kosher Bush in a really small roach mice-infested apartment. Didn't have much money. My father died when I was 12. So it was not easy. My mother, raising 3 boys without not a lot of money. Tricky. But, it's funny, like your adversity, when you grow up in it, you learn to be a figure-it-out person. You learn to, you don't really think of it as much of a struggle as when you face adversities when you're an adult, which is why it's so important when you have kids and when you're younger to let your kids work through the adversity, let them work through the difficulties, because that's what gets them ready to be bulletproof and gets them ready to deal with what the world's going to present, which is not all a bunch of roses. So it's so important that I look at like all my adversity as my advantage. Including my ADHD, including the poverty, including not having a dad, like all that just made me so much of a better dad. It's made me so much of a better business person. And it's made me, just tougher to deal with what's inevitably going to happen, which is, shit's going to happen. Like, you're going to step in some potholes, man. Yeah. And if you've not done that as a kid, it comes in a real shocker. And we've seen a lot of adults that just, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle things, and it doesn't really fit well. So for me, my childhood was incredibly inspirational because I had a great mom. Listened to my mom, did everything she told me. You gotta have balls, which is my second book, the one that you seem to have read, was my mother's favorite line. You gotta have balls, be relentless, be fearless, don't stop, and don't settle for success. Nobody's gonna remember that. Extraordinary means going all the way. It means taking things to the highest limit you can, not being able to settle for just having something that works. But knowing that it works, there's probably more room to do even better. So a lot of lessons from mom. You read about those in the book, which we'll go through in the conversation. That were really brilliant, enabling me to be the business person I am today.
Let's talk about that, because you do talk about your mom with this reverence and a real appreciation. And this is a woman that was as a single parent, raising her boys in Brooklyn and not having the easiest go of it. And yet she was constantly an inspiration for you. And I think, like you said, would let you fail, but was always there to pick you up, but always told you got to go back, get back up another round. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but she really was something special in your life.
I think my mother really was a big pusher of, like, you can create a future that even if you weren't informed about what it's going to be, not to be afraid of that, they weren't sure how I was going to go. Every time I would face different junctures in my career, even starting at 10, she's like, you may have a career, you may not be informed about what it's going to be, but just keep working hard and keep growing. And I think that a lot of people don't talk about two big things that are huge to me. One is growth. What is, you can be a rose. What's your rate of self-effectiveness? Are you growing? Like, immediately I could tell when somebody's at the same job for a long period of time, not that there's anything wrong with it, but that's not a winning ticket for me.
Yeah.
So, what's your rate of growth? I always can tell, what's your rate of curiosity? How curious you are, how much do you want to learn, which kind of in a sense works side by side with growth is curiosity. It's such a very important part of entrepreneurism. You have to be one of these people that is not afraid to ask questions, not worried about what other people think, and realizing that no matter how much you know, there's still more to go. I think my learning disability as a young age really helped me, kind of support my, what my brother would say, you're an idiot, but I would say, like, I still don't get it. Explain that to me. And I was, I had a high level of external distraction. I was always kind of looking around, trying to see, where the white space was. And I always saw different opportunities that most people didn't see. I always thought about things differently. And I think mainly because I was incredibly curious and I had a high level of common sense. My kids always say, Dad, I'm a lot smarter than you. But, you got me on the common sense. I'm like, well, I'm like, one of my kids is a brilliant kid. And I get why you would say that. But to really put things in play, you must have a high level of common sense, which is really having a high level of empathy. And empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So you have to be able to get out of your head and put yourself in someone else's head, thinking what they're thinking about, feel what they're feeling, see what they're seeing, not where you want to sell, not what you're thinking. And a lot of people struggle with that. It's like the number they want to make, the product that they're selling, but it's all about what the person that you're talking to, what they need. And that's when you see the white space. So, you got to turn up your curiosity. You got to have empathy, especially if you want to be somebody who wants to thrive more. You want to thrive more, and you really want to find what is needed, trying to find a new business. It's not only about coming up with an idea, it's about coming up with an idea, visualizing that through other people's eyes. And I think it's just critical. Like, it's not a hard thing to do, but most people struggle to do it.
Yeah. You have a common theme in again, the book I read is You Got to Have Balls. And again, Brandon has 2 other books, another one on the way. But what I loved about this is it's a lot of his genesis story, right? How he started off. But you have throughout the book too, you keep having this theme of what else? And it was like, what else can I do to over deliver, to bring more value? But it wasn't just a trite saying. Like, when I was reading it, I got inspired because then you give an example of how you would go so far above and beyond without any expectation of something in return, but then it would always come back to you tenfold, in goodwill. Talk to me, if you could, how you got to that what else kind of
Well, at
mindset.
an early age, I mean, you got to do as much as you can for as many people as you can, as often as you can, and expect nothing back. That's a very difficult thing. And I always say it doesn't really matter where you are. What really matters is what you want to accept. And I think when you think about it, when you draw the line and go, I'm not putting up with this anymore. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a job, maybe it's a boss. Only until then are you fully committed to doing something about it. So, it's really important thing is like, what's your level of acceptance? And then, the other thing is, value is what you can do for someone that they can't do for themselves. So the objective in business is to really find value, create value for yourself with a relationship that you're about to get into, whether it's a client, a friend, a spouse. What's your value proposition? And that is, I'm sure my wife loves me for a lot of different reasons, but I earn my keep every day by going home, emptying the garbage. I know that's a value proposition. It's important to her. I go home, maybe, I take the kids off her hands, whatever it is, you fall in love for a lot of reasons. So I don't want to downplay the importance of having a relationship based on just the fact that you're in love, but you maintain and keep a relationship alive by earning your keep, value. Find things that are important to the other person and keep doing it. And don't expect that other person just going to be there. I think what's really important in business, and what's been my motto for a long time, is an early indicator. I think I've never been, my wife is a master's from University of Chicago and Wharton grad and all that bullshit. And I said it with all due respect because, I have a lot of respect for people that go to Ivy Leagues, but they overplay their hand with the forecasts and the budget. Early indicators that your idea maybe works. An early indicator. And for me, I've been a master of looking for early indicators because what happens is people get so bent up about coming up with an idea and how big it's going to be. And I'm trying to find out if it works.
Yeah.
And I use the word, I try it. Now, I don't go, I got this big idea. No, I got this idea, I'm going to try it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Try it. And then when I see the early indicators, when I see the things starting to work, and this has been really important because, I got thrown out of Steiner. I had sold the company. I worked at 35 years building that company. I built an industry. And then one day I was about to buy it back and I had a hostile takeover. I get thrown out. I'm grateful. Love that company. Mm-hmm. They still got it going. Keep my name alive.
Sure.
So when I started my new company, I had a bunch of new ideas already in place that I was going to put in place. So it wasn't as much of a transition, but I don't know if it was going to work. I'm a technology immigrant. I don't know. I'm starting a marketplace. I'm doing something much different online than anyone else is doing. And I'm looking for early indicators. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know the business that I'm about to get into. I don't know where it's going, but I'm looking for something, a spark. Not, oh my God, you're not going to believe this big deal I did. No, because that's the pressure. And you create this expectation level. And then all of a sudden, if it sways, you start getting disappointed, you get off track. I'm just looking for early indicators. I'm looking for something to latch on that says, we got hope. The other thing is another big thing I like to share with you is that I've just never been a guy who just likes doing what everyone else is doing. I always say, if someone else is doing it, let them. Let them. I look for a bunch of lazy people if I'm trying to do something that someone else is doing because it's the laziest thing you can do. Yeah. Is doing what everyone else is doing. Yeah. It's just, that's not why we're here. We're here to do whatever's being done better. I'm here to do what I'm doing because I feel like no one else could do it if I can. If I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. Like the marketplace I created with Collectible Exchange is thousands and thousands of people have huge sports collectors of cards, they don't know what to do with them. If nobody creates this marketplace for all these older people and people that have all this stuff to do, I don't know who's going to do it. Is it going to work? I don't know. But I'm looking for an early indicator. I have a company called starstock.com, which is where you put all your trading cards. It's also a vault in the marketplace where we hold your cards and we can help you trade them. I don't know if it's going to work, but we're trying. We're looking for early indicators. We're feeling that out and we're thriving on those early indicators when they look positive. And just so you know, there have been a ton of early indicators that have sucked. That have just not worked. I'm like, there's got to be a spark here somewhere. Nothing. It wasn't slow, was no. But a lot of them have worked. Yeah. So even at 60, when I started this company, and I love building stuff, and I'm in the middle of building a whole bunch of things, I'm not here to come out, no. I'm just trying it. I'm curious. I'm enthusiastic. And by the way, the root word of enthusiasm is enthusios, to be with God. You must have faith in your process. You must have faith in the diet that you're creating to start new business, to start new creations. You got to believe that if you're prepared, you're working hard, you like your strategy, you like your ability, but you also have to have faith in God or faith in a higher power, that if you do the right thing and work really hard, that the right thing will happen.
Yeah.
And I couple that with a common denominator of early indicator. Because, the good Lord, who, you don't control a lot, and sometimes the good Lord doesn't like your idea as much as you do.
Sure.
And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I get it. It's not going to be a rosy, one simple, get on a train, it's going to be X amount of stops, and boom, there you're at the station. You're going to be on a sailboat, and there'll be some days where it's beautiful out, and you're sailing right along. There'll be some days where there'll be no wind at all, and you're never going to know if you're going to get anywhere. And there'll be some days where there's more wind, and you think you get blown out of the water, and the whole thing's going to go to shit. Yeah. So understand the ride you're about to get into when you get into entrepreneurship. When you try to really thrive more, understand the rocky roads that come with thriving more, and understand that no matter what is happening, stay curious, have a high level of enthusiasm, right? And make sure you have a tremendous amount of empathy, which is common sense. And those coupled up with value is what gets you through the door and gives you a chance. Now, when you get all those basic things together, then you got to be compelling. You got to be able to tell a story that isn't just, okay, we do this, we do that. That's not enough. Somebody's not going to buy your product just because it's a good product. You seem like a nice guy. You got to be compelling. You got to be interesting. You got to build up a story, and you got to come up with a story that really couples your enthusiasm, your curiosity, your empathy all together. It says, wow, I love that person. And the brands I'm talking about, the Nikes, the Four Seasons. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I mean, brands that are like, wow, that's cool. Tesla, Apple. Those are brands that there are other people that do what they do, but we love Nike.
Yeah.
We love the Four Seasons, right? Because they're compelling and they tell a story that's above and beyond. You can get plenty of places to go get a hotel room.
Well, one of the most thank you for that. I mean, you just gave a masterclass in how to get a business started, and what Brandon has left out that is so apparent in his book and in his life is the amount of work that he puts behind trying these things. Over your right shoulder is a batting glove. I can see of Derek Jeter and a nice frame of that. And I know that you know Derek well. Your relationship with the New York Yankees, and we have to get to the point where they built the new stadium and the new park, and you ended up literally, Brandon, that you guys are listening to right now, sold just about everything out of the old Yankee Stadium. Seats, foul poles, even anything you could take out of that stadium, he had an opportunity to sell and did. And it's a fascinating story. So I definitely want you to tell that. But can you please just speak to you from the time you were 10, you had this love of the Yankees. I mean, just this deep embedded, they're part of your fabric. And the fact that that became really the impetus that blew up your career is like a Cinderella story. It's just an amazing, beautiful American story. Can you talk about how you put that together? You do in the book, but I would love for the listeners, if you could talk about.
It's a little bit of luck, to be honest with you. I mean, when I look back on it, what's funny is like, I really want to stress this to people out there, is that when you go through the process, make sure you enjoy it. Because it doesn't get better than the process and climbing the hill. It's the joy isn't getting up to the top of the hill. The joy is getting up there. And I maybe didn't enjoy it as much as like when I look back now at that part of my career. I'm like, wow, I don't believe I did that. But, I just did it by what I just said, being highly enthusiastic, very curious. It's not who you know, what you know, but what you know about who. Using people that you know to help you get to other people is really important. People get confused about networking. Just get to know the people that you already know better and see who they know. It's a much better way to network. And now they call that LinkedIn. But at the end of the day, come up with your own version of that. And that's, that'll get you that gets you to a certain finish line. That's pretty damn good. I don't know, man. It's just like the whole thing just snowballed. Like it's so outrageous how the whole thing happened because I started with Phil Rizzuto and Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle. I mean, it's just a dream to work with those guys. And Mantle was amazing to me.
So talk, if you can't talk about that, you met, I would say, a childhood idol, the childhood idol, right? Mickey Mantle. What was that like?
I mean, it was amazing because Again, it was a value proposition. I was throwing the closed circuit fights, and Mickey loved those. And I almost invested in opening up his restaurant. I haven't been in the sports bar business, but I didn't. And I started my own company, and I'd always invite Mickey to these closed circuit fights. And there was all these athletes that are there. It was amazing. And then he just took a liking to me. Mickey was like an either or guy, like you're good with him or you're not. Well, not a lot of middle ground. And for some reason, he really took a liking to me. And he'd walk in a room, he'd beeline right over me, Brandon, what's going on? How are you? I just did so many nice things for me. And then it led to really, because it was very hard to get Mickey to do things, people would call me up. Mickey, of course, wouldn't do it. Then I became really close with Yogi.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, Yogi thing led to me representing Phil Rizzuto. And, the Yankees weren't that good in the late 80s and in the early 90s. So, it's kind of finding my way with the Yogi Berra and Mickey Mantle and Phil Rizzuto, which is amazing. And then one night I was on the phone with Phil Rizzuto, and at the time I was representing him, and I was trying to sell him on this deal. He goes, Steiner. Always call me Steiner. Are you watching the game? I'm like, of course I'm watching the game. Of course I wasn't. But he's like, you're not watching because the guy just hit a double and you would have said something. I go, you're right. I'm not watching. I turn on the TV. You Huckleberry, you're not watching the game. Do you have this kid Jeter? I'm like, Jeter? He's not even a starter. Like, why would I have him? He goes, Tony Frank. He goes, this kid's going right in the Hall of Fame. He's better than I ever was. And he's never recommended anything other than me helping him. Yeah. He was like an older grandfather. Like, you couldn't do enough for him. But he was like, you better get this kid. And I don't know what got into me. I took that lead and I jumped after that. And I had Joe Torre at that time, which was key, the skipper. And then, Mariano, Pettit, Posada, they were all followed. The 98 team, I had, I think, 15 guys of the 25 guys on the roster. And I just went on a hunch, and I literally... And when you say it sounds really sexy, Roger, right? But, I had to take a second mortgage on my house. I built up this inventory. I was growing out of business, really, very quickly, because things were taking off. I had money on the street. I had money in inventory. And I had to go to a bank. He's like, listen, the way we'll give you more money to take a second mortgage in your house. And my wife's like, give him the papers. We'll sign right now. So, it's really important, like the people that you count on that trust are around you, they can be monumental at one particular moment of time. Like my wife, she's like every other wife, give me a hard time, pain in the butt, the whole thing. But, she's been incredible at different junctures to say, go for it. You're good. Don't worry about it. And I can just count countless times where that's happened. And, it's really important that you're a significant person. Be that person, when you come to that, to give you that support and love. And listen, the thing could have gone. I don't think it was going to go to hell, but, you never know. And that was a time we almost went out of business. We almost grew out of business.
Talk about that, Brandon, because when you say like you had them, all these, 15 to 18 that were on the roster, explain to the listeners exactly what you were doing with them and how you were monetizing their personal brands and whatnot.
I mean, nobody really knew. I was the first person to do what I was doing, which is putting together product lines around an entire player from the time they're high school, little league, the whole thing. And I put together all these product lines. And then David Wells pitched a perfect game sometime in May of 98. And I knew that we could sell a team piece with carrying David off the field. And I only had a few $100,000 and it took every bit of it. And then all of a sudden, David gave me a hard time. He didn't want to sign him. He didn't feel we were paying him enough. We've resolved that problem since, but not an easy period of time because we were stuck with all this product and we didn't have David Wells. And at 4 a.m, one of my employees and I came up with a solution. But in the meantime, we had gone to a bank. We exhausted all of our resources and we were about to go broke. And then we figured out how to maybe create a shadow box piece with a sign ball that we bought from the competitor. And it looked like was the way it was supposed to be, Wells on the side and the whole photo of the carrying off the field. But, different things happen. And I always say it's not what happens to you, but you do what happens and take action over anxiety. I was with this employee like the whole day till about 10 at night, got him home, and now I'm on the phone with him from about 12 to 4:30 in the morning. I remember my wife waking up and going, who are you on the phone with? And wherever it is, you've been on the phone for 4 hours and 30 minutes. But we were just racking our brains trying to think of every which way we could resolve this problem. It was a critical problem, and we took action on it. We just kept thinking of every scenario of how we can go get David to sign these items. So, I mean, I think it's really important that you realize that, when you're headed towards doing some really cool things, you're going to hit some obstacles. And it's all about how you want to deal with those obstacles.
If I heard you correctly, Brandon, you have you had spent, a couple $100,000 on these pieces, these beautiful frame pieces of him being carried off the field, but you didn't come to an agreement on the price for him to sign them. So you ended up buying, if I heard this correctly, you bought baseballs that he had signed for a competitor and then just framed that baseball and positioned it so that his signature was front of this picture.
With the scorecard, with the lineup cards.
That's innovative problem solving.
The ball, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, it's like you never know how things are going to play out. But I think for me, it's like, you got to remember, it also happens at a time when people aren't that familiar with collectibles. One of the things I probably accomplished, besides 30 million autographs and 50, 60 million dollars of game used dirt, I've done a lot of really cool things with collectibles, but I've been extremely diligent. And I really want to express the importance when you're taking a leadership role in a company or in an industry, as I did. You must do what's best sometimes for the common good, not always what's best for you. So anybody that knows me, knows Brandon Steiner, and knows me from even Steiner Sports, knows that I was always out doing interviews explaining how this collectible thing worked, how a signing worked, how these players came and signed stuff, what was game used, what was game issued, art, all that stuff. And it took a lot of explaining. And I mean, if you ever Google me, there's just insane amounts of articles where I'm just not selling me, not getting anything out of it, but I'm just trying to explain how the industry works. Yeah. And I always felt like as the industry would grow, the more I could educate people, the more I would being a leader in it, I would be an advantage in the long run. I tell people that are leaders all the time that if you're not looking to help that company to be better than when you found it, that you're in the wrong role, let alone the industry that you're in, making sure the industry is better than when you found it. And that's what it's all about. So for me, it's been really advantageous because when I switched over and started this new company, Collectible Exchange, I had a fan base, not a customer base, a fan base, because people knew who I was. They understood that I was constantly reaching out. I was one of these people that picked up the phone, showed up, and talked very often. Because, when you're investing money in something, you feel a little weird if you don't really know what you're buying. But if you have somebody you can actually ask and explain how this all works, it's somewhat calming. So I feel really good about my career. I'm really nervous as all hell. I was saying, like, people say, don't be afraid to fail. Like, that's bullshit. Like, I'm afraid. I mean, I wake up with a lot of nervousness. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. Although what I am not afraid to do is to try. I'm not ever going to be afraid to try. But, you're going to fail. I mean, I've had a bunch of things, even in the 4 years I'm started this new company. Boy, man, it's been a smack in the face. I mean, and again, I'm just looking for just proof of concept. Stop with the flow charts and the forecasts. See if what you're talking about has a little momentum. And it's funny how a simple concept like that, as opposed to trying to raise all this money. And I see investors, companies investing all this money and like, they don't even know if this even has any traction. Yeah. And I'm just not a fan of it. But for me, just a little bit of and then also not accepting where I'm at has been really important for me. Yeah. Even the Yankee thing, like we worked on the Yankee deal, which was a memorabilia. I mean, it was a game changer for the industry. It wasn't necessarily the best deal for me personally, but from a brand standpoint, it was huge. And from an industry standpoint, it set the tone for all these teams and players to maybe get into the action. But after 2 years of working on a contract with Randy Levine, who was great, and Lon Strohs and Marty Greenspun, the last second, I mean, literally, we're finally done, and we just signed the event. Wait a minute. If you guys ever sell that stadium, I've got to be involved in that. Well, we can't put that in the contract. It's too late. I said, I've got to do that. And he goes, you got my word. So when they announced the new stadium, so again, the what else, back to the book for a minute. But, when I have success, and this is a common thing where, people have a tendency when they have some success, they want to celebrate. Me, I'm moving to what else? I'm moving to what's bigger. Because I'm on a roll. I'm like, I always look myself at the craps table. If I'm hot and I'm winning, I'm not walking away. Yeah. I signed that Yankee deal immediately. I got into the what else mode, which is two things. I wanted my own store. I negotiated that. After I signed the deal, as I'm signing it, they promised me they'd give me a store so I can make sure I get my product in the stadium, which was huge. It was like a showcase. And then I got if we sold the old stadium, I'd be involved in it. And they lived up to their word. Every day, 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. God bless them. I'm so happy that they did. Wow. So it's really, really important that you. And then again, so I did the Yankee deal. I go to the office, like, what's the next biggest thing we could do? Like Notre Dame, Red Sox, Cubs. Like I just went right to work. I didn't celebrate. And when I look back, I wish I had celebrated a little bit, because I should have celebrated a little bit. But I'm not a big fan of the over celebration, because it gets in the way of the momentum of what's really hard to create, which is success. And especially the success that you have usually has legs to go even further, which you want to, which is extraordinary.
Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. One of the great stories I loved reading is, and you're a dyed-in-the-wool Yankee fan, which means you're not a huge Boston Red Sox fan, right? To say the least. Yet when the Red Sox beat the Yankees, you didn't take that as, oh man, that's a bummer and the season's over. No, there's probably some elated Red Sox fans who haven't been in this position in, I don't know, 7-8 decades, whatever it was. And you went up there and did business. Like, talk about that.
I did. I was ready to jump off a bridge. I was really upset. I was flipped out. I was like, what did I do? I just signed my Yankee deal.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get out of bed. And then finally, I was like, wait a minute. If I'm this depressed, there's another group of people that are like the opposite.
Yeah.
And I immediately signed every Red Sox player I could. And that was the biggest year I've ever had in my business career, is the Red Sox winning the first World Series. That was the reverse of the curse. I went all in. I knew what to do. I took all the skills that God had given me, that had built up all the Yankee stuff that I had done over the last 10 years prior to that, and I put it right against the Red Sox. Matter of fact, when Derek Jeter came up to the office and he saw all the Red Sox stuff, he didn't come back up to the office for maybe 5 or 6 years. He's never admitted that it was upsetting, but I think it tripped him out a little bit. It tripped everyone out a little bit, because we couldn't believe the depth and the size that we were selling. It was really amazing. And it just shows you, like, no matter how bad things may seem to get, there is, no matter how flat the pancake is, there's always two sides.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect case in point.
I mean, you just can't make it up. Like, your arch nemesis beats your team and goes to the first World Series forever, breaks the curse, and that becomes the biggest opportunity.
Even when I went to the Mets, like, the Yankees, the Mets don't really get along. And I was like, so I gone there, I said, look, I could be the bridge. If the Yankees have me as a partner and then you have me as a partner, I could be that one that can actually start pulling things together where both of you can work on things. We're both in the same town. And they bought into that. That was a value proposition. Like, here's what I could do for you that probably no one else could do. Is I'm right inside the Yankees. I'm right inside the Yankee offices. That Met deal didn't last long. I mean, not a great organization to work with, frankly. So, I think the quality of your customer, most people don't talk about. Like, not all money is good money.
Oof.
And, working with shitty customers is maybe one of the worst things you could do, because it kills your spirit. Yep. They don't appreciate the work. And that's a good way of losing your employees, because they don't feel appreciated from the customer standpoint. And then I'm happy with the work that they're doing because the customer doesn't appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is what people don't talk about is, quality of your customer. It's huge. And a lot of times your employees will quit because they're just unhappy with the work that they're doing, mostly because it's not appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I try to be careful. Like, now, again, it's easy to say this when you have some backup and you have a business that's rolling. I get it. I'm a lot more diligent, but I have fired some customers. I have fired some friends. It's important to get rid of the things that are around you that are negative. Now, sometimes you have to do what you got to do, and it's not always what you want, but you do what you need to do in order to do it. But you can come back around and get rid of it. Like, you can let your employees know that this is not for long. And let them know that this is not a customer we're going to be keeping for very long. We need this business now, but, that kind of thing.
And one of your sayings, because you have some great sayings in your book, is play the game, not the score. If you can speak to that, playing the game, not the score.
I mean, I think, I've never had, people say, how many hours a week do you work? I have no idea. I've never had an idea. So I would say, if you got a shot clock in your office, You need to change careers.
Mm.
And I see people yabba dabba do it. For those young ones out there, that's a Fred Flintstone thing, where, you know, at the end of the day, yabba dabba do, slide down the dinosaur. Like, that's just not been me.
Yeah.
When I'm hot and I'm running, the last thing I'm worried about is when I'm leaving. I'm not worried about what time it is. I'm worried about, how do I go get this?
Yep.
It's like the guy who he's got 3 for 3. He's not asking the manager, can I come out? He wants every, you know, it's like you got to treat every at bat like it's your first and last at bat. And the great ones, the ones that go in the Hall of Fame, do, because those are the little at bats that, you know, it's one at bat here, one at bat there that stops you from getting in the Hall of Fame. And for me, like, I just, you know, I believe in work life, respect life, you know, not work life balance, but respect life balance. And you got to respect, you know, your family, your personal time. You can't discount it, especially for long periods of time. But if you're worried about how many hours you're working, and I see a lot of young ones that do, and I have a lot of respect for the young kids that are out there these days. They're incredibly smart. They get shit done really quickly. They bring a lot to the table. I love partnering with younger people, where people my age always complain about young ones, but that's been going on for years. Sure. Not me. I keep a lot of young ones around me, and I believe in reverse mentoring. But one of the things that I disagree with a lot of young ones, and it has taken shape, is the not going in the office. They don't think they should go in the office. And I think at the very least, it's a hybrid where you go in most of the time, and maybe a couple of days you work from home. But I also think it's really, really important, critical, that you just can't feel like you know everything. Sure. And I think that, you know, the young ones sometimes get their information so quick that sometimes I think they think they know more than they do. And that's my job, to keep them on straight. And then for me, like, they're always showing me, Brandon, there's a quick way to do this. Brandon, do it this way. I have a problem with my phone. I have a problem finding an app or a simple way. These kids are amazing. Yeah. So, you know, I go both ways on it, but I think that's really important to keep young kids around you. Reverse mentoring is something I thrive on. I've been on social media now for about 15 years, posting religiously on all my social medias, going live and doing a lot of video stuff, which, you know, I mean, most older people, they're just not doing it. And I don't understand why. What an unbelievable opportunity to communicate with my customers. So if you're out there and you don't know how social media works, it's okay. I get it. But not doing it is just enabling you to become extinct that much faster. Yeah. If you want to communicate with your grandkids, your kids, a younger audience, particularly even an older audience, you better learn to get on your social media and do more than just put a post up once in a while. Yeah. And I can't believe how many people are still not engaged or don't understand how it works. Yeah. So it's been a huge part of my success. And just happened the other day, I'll tell you something, Roger, it was really interesting. It's like my favorite thing, and that is when somebody walks up to me and says, you know, Brandon, we were just talking about you the other night. Like, can you believe, like, without me pitching, calling them, they actually were talking about something, brought me up. I mean, it's the ultimate compliment. It is. And what that comes from is not being good at what you do. It's being extraordinary at what you do. It's also being compelling. If you think that just by coming up with a bottle, putting water in it and having it at a shelf at a restaurant, in a grocery store somewhere, you think that's going to take you to the promised land? Nah. People got to love you. They got to love you. Not like you, love you. And you have to have a compelling story around your product. You got to be able to tell it. And you got to be able to sell it really well. And you got to give them something that's unique, that differentiates us from all the other water. And most people can't do it.
Well, that's a perfect lead-in. I mean, you talk about water in a bottle on the shelf. And you just glazed over this so quickly. I don't even know if a lot of the listeners heard you say this, but you were responsible for selling $50 to $60 million worth of little vials of dirt. Yeah, I mean, that is innovative marketing. And if you could just speak to that, because that is no small feat.
You know, I tell people all the time, like, people say, how'd you start the collectible business? It wasn't for love of collectibles. Even though I was a collector, it was out of desperateness. Like, I mean, it was 2007. The economy was going to hell. Everybody was flipping out. Our business was really dropping because people were, taking a big hit. And I was like, for the 100th time, I went home and said, I don't know if we're going to make it. My wife had to get W4 oil to her eyes were rolling back. More times when I go home, I said, I think we're done. I think we're not going to make it. And then one of my employees had talked about a photo and taking a capsule of dirt and putting it on the photo to make it a little more authentic. Then we started spraying adhesive on the photo and putting the dirt on the photo. Then we came up with dirt pens, dirt coasters, dirt clocks. It was unbelievable. And then we started coming up with a ballpark map with the dirt of every team on there, all 32 teams. And all dirt is not created equal, by the way. the viscosity, the color, all unique. So it made for a good conversation.
Yeah.
It made, and people know me from selling dirt or selling bricks. Like we're in the middle of selling the Florida State bricks. And if anybody's been to Tallahassee, you know that stadium. It's not the greatest stadium. It's really cool, great moments, great players, and they've got these bricks. Well, they're remodeling it. I took the bricks, I'm selling them. Like most people say, a brick? But if you put it in the right case and you cut the brick up with a photo of the stadium, it's kind of compelling. It's different. So I've sold more grass, more bricks. Grass legally, by the way. We take the grass and freeze dry it. Yeah. I tell you, if you really want to hear a whole story, go to Brandon Steiner TED Talk Syracuse.
Okay.
There's a TED Talk I did like maybe 6-7 years ago. It was really good. Well, it's a great
We'll put that in the show notes. We'll actually put a link right there in the show notes so people can just click right on that. So if you can, I want to ask you one more thing, and then I'll finish with just a couple questions here. But so they decide, they build a new Yankee Stadium. They're going to demolish the old one, but you're able to sell just about everything out of there. And a lot of the players wanted some, seats or their locker, the famous sign. I don't know if you're able to disclose, because I know you couldn't in the book what he paid for that sign, but can you just talk about the really, it was almost a frenzy around that stadium. It was there. And I would never think, I think the brilliance of you is that before that would even happen, you were thinking about what you could do with the seats and the lockers and all that. But just talk about that time in history when the old Yankee Stadium with all that history was literally for sale.
I mean, I was thinking about it, and I'm saying a little bit of a fan, a little bit of a business person. And I went to the Yankees. I said, I think we need to get a couple 100,000 pieces out of this. Like, huh? I said, it's going to be a labor of love, but I just don't see having the crazy Yankee fans, knowing that I'm one, not get something.
Yeah.
So, we went with cutting up the in the center field, there was the black. I did a deal with Reggie Jackson. He signed it. It was great. Cut the foul pole up. I mean, we just did a lot of cool things. Took the carpet in the locker room, made doormats, car mats out of it. Cut the bench, the benches up, sold the phones, the bullpen phones, the speakers. We went crazy. I went crazy. I mean, it was probably one of my great pieces of work. But, I mean, it was a labor of love. It was a tremendous amount of work, a lot to communicate, a lot to figure out. It was one of those projects I did have to take out the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
It was about $18 million we were laying out. It was a lot of money. It was a little bit above my pay grade even. Yeah. And, it was a lot of money. And I had to really take a serious look at what we were doing. But what was the most creative thing was, we took the chairs, there was so many of them, and we created bar stools, office chairs. We created benches with the bleachers. Yeah. Like, we were really creative with the chairs. These seat backs, and we'd frame them up with photos of different things. We'd take the number 7 seat back and put a picture of Mickey Mantle, the number 2 with Jeter. So, we got really crazy and creative about it. And then we sold millions of dollars of dirt from that old ballpark, which is amazing. So it was fun. I mean, you got to have some fun with it. And it's a project that I don't regret, even though it was the most profitable project I ever did. And it came at a time when I knew that stadium needed a certain amount of respect.
Yeah.
We just knock it down. We needed to make every last piece of it memorable and respectful because a lot of people put a lot of time in, and a lot of great players walked on that field.
Yeah.
You sell $60 million of dirt, but you got to remember the Joe DiMaggio's, the Judges, the Jeters, the Yogis. I mean, think about the greatness that walked on that field.
Yeah.
It's not just dirt.
Legends.
Well, maybe there's just dirt. I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like,
no, man.
But it's a compelling story.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
And we had a little spark that maybe people were interested in this dirt, and we went and we took it as far as we could take it.
I love it. I always ask a couple questions at the end of every interview, and I cannot wait to hear your answers to this. So, the first one of the two is, if we fast forward to the end of your life, and my gosh, you've done some amazing things in your life, but let's say we get to the end of your life and there's a loved one reading your eulogy. So you're looking down from above and you've lived this beautiful life, but the time has come and a loved one is reading your eulogy. And Brandon, they're only allowed to choose 3 descriptors, 3 words to describe you and the life and the impression you left on them and all that are in attendance. What 3 words do you hope that person chooses to say about you, to describe you?
He was generous, amazing dad, and husband. And I think also like he was just unpredictable. The third thing they would say is, I don't even know how to describe this guy because there's so many weird, outrageous things. And it's hard to imagine he did that all in one life, but he never wasted a minute. He was always thinking, and he was always trying to figure out how to be better, do better. And most importantly, I think the first one, being generous and being a kind person is something that I'm constantly working on and trying to improve on.
Oh, love it. And then the last one, if I gave her a magic wand and you were to be able to wave this magic wand tonight, and we all wake up tomorrow and the world in which we live in is different in one way. It's different the way you want it to be different because you wave that wand. When we wake up tomorrow, how is the world different according to Brandon Steiner?
Oh boy. I mean, which the sad thing is that I'm constantly thinking about that question all the time. It's not like an odd question for me. It's just that the answer is so complicated these days. If you're a responsible adult that maybe has a little bit of influence and can make a difference, as I'm thinking about every day in my, latter years, like, it's not about the money anymore. Like what difference am I going to make? I think one of the most important things is, oh boy, I mean, it's a toss up, but world hunger, the amount of people that go to bed, don't have food, knowing that I was one of those kids once, I just hard to imagine that we can't figure out with all the food, how we get world hunger cured. And the other thing is we just try to remove hate. Yeah. We just gotta somehow figure out that just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I need to hate you. Yep. And, it's very hard right now in this country. Politically, we're separated, we're separated on a bunch of issues, but I don't have a problem with it. I'm not a huge, Trump was one of my customers and he's always great to me. Yeah. So it's always a little conflict with me because the guy did business with me. It was always really nice to me. And I know that a lot of people hate Trump, but so, I'm a Democrat on that side of it just because I grew up and I never would have probably been here without Democratic support as I was growing up. But I love sitting with Trumpsters.
Yeah.
I like a lot of things that Trump did and I hate a lot of things he did. But even though my view is different and I'm upset about some of the things, let's say, that Trump has done, I have no problem sitting with a Trump supporter and listening to them. How else am I going to possibly know their view and what they really think? Because 49% of the country thinks that way. So I don't have a problem sitting with people that are I don't have a problem sitting down with somebody that's racist. I'm not happy about that they're racist because I'm not. But how am I going to understand why that person exists and why they have such hatred for race? But I have no problem sitting down with them. And that's what we need. That's what this country's built on. Like, so I wish that more people would see it that way. Like, just because somebody disagrees with you, it doesn't feel the same way you feel, doesn't mean you got to hate them.
Yep.
You don't have to agree with them either.
Yep.
But understanding, like my mother taught me at an early age, my mother always said, like, why do you think you're going to be good in sales and marketing? I said, because I like people. She's like, screw that. Forget about liking. You're not in the business of like. You're in the business of understanding people. You want to be highly successful at marketing and sales, you need to understand people. Not like. Don't be in the like and dislike business.
Yeah.
And I think that's great advice, really. Like, it really is so important. This gets back to value proposition and understanding people, empathy. Yep. My mother had a ton of empathy, and she really impressed upon me at an early age. Empathy can be a really, really valuable tool in life and in business.
You've said several times during this discussion the word curiosity and empathy, which if you have those two, I think it's probably impossible to hate somebody, right? If you have genuine curiosity and empathy, it eliminates that.
And enthusiasm. You got to believe me. God put all these different colored people and all these different, gay, straight, but he put us all on this planet for a reason.
Yep.
So may as well try to see how we can all get along instead of being judging.
Because the current way is not working. Most important question I can ask you, Brandon, where can the listeners find you, follow you, just be part of your journey?
Well, three things. One, you can get my book on collectibleexchange.com.
Collectibleexchange.com. And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
You can pick up my book for free. Just pay for the shipping. Don't forget about starstock.com if you have trading cards. And then on LinkedIn, I'm past the number, but you can follow me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I post constantly on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So if you like the content, you like some of the things I'm talking about, which I hope you did. There's a lot more, and I'm constantly sharing it for free. And hopefully maybe you'll come, and when I'm speaking around the country, you'll be one of those people in my audience. All the money, by the way, from my books and speaking goes to charity. So, I'm very grateful that people have hired me and I've been able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity. So thank you if you're out there, you've done that in the past. Thank you, because you made a difference for some people you may not even realize.
I just want to say thank you for this time. I'm better off for having spent this 45 minutes with you, and forever will be. And I know the listeners will as well. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Thrive more. I'm motivated.
I appreciate it.
Hopefully you are. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Message me. I answer everything.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.